Welcome, everyone. How are you guys doing today? I hope we didn't do too much delay for starting the live, just 5 minutes. We will not have Versan on camera today. He's going to explain the reasons in just a minute. We had to skip last podcast last Monday. I was just coming back from Las Vegas in the same day from XRP Las Vegas, where I got to meet some extraordinary people. Some of you, I know a lot of people who watch our podcast were there in Las Vegas. Now, Versan, explain your situation and tell the people why you will not be on camera today.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. No, I just put a message out last week. I told people I got sick. I came down with something, and it almost never happens. I try to take good care of myself, but what started as a mild cough turned into something far more serious. I'm speaking to you from the doctor's office, actually, from the hospital. But yeah, the intensity of a cough, it triggered, my muscles to contract, and it locked up the muscles around my spine and started pressing on my nerves. So I'm in a lot of pain right now, and I am recovering, though. Staying focused, and God willing, I'll be full strength next week.
Yeah, Versan, we appreciate your efforts to come on the show, even though you are quite feeling sick. I remember it's the second time you got sick in these 2 or 3 years that we met, and the first time we spoke about the XRP escrow. And by the way, guys, you should go back in time and see the best escrow explanation. I think he even managed to explain the escrow better than everyone from Ripple, which is quite hilarious when he was sick last time. So I think he's gonna drop some knowledge bombs today that he's sick again. That's like the irony, anyways,
Yeah.
we have some topics here that we want to cover. Well, the first one is about BTC hitting $108,000. I think we can analyze that. Let me share my screen here, because the first thing I want to talk about is definitely BTC dominance. So give me a second here. I'm going to tap to present. Hope you guys don't get bored of seeing only my face today on the podcast since Versan's not here. Well, I try to keep it the best as I can. So yeah, we have the BTC dominance here.
Okay.
The first thing that gets my attention is that the dominance is still very high. So we are at 64.68%. That's a very high Bitcoin dominance. That means that there is a lot of gasoline in the fire for other cryptocurrencies, because if you study history, you should know that every cycle, usually Bitcoin pumps first. This cycle has been quite different. We had XRP outperforming most of the traditional cryptocurrencies. That includes BNB, Ethereum, Solana. Well, we're talking about the ones that have a higher market cap. And this cycle has been very particular because XRP, unlike the previous cycles, we use it to say XRP usually pumps last but the hardest. This time XRP, if we take the numbers from, let's say, September, October, November, you all remember XRP was just 50, 60, 70 cents. We're still at $2.20 or 30 cents right now, something in between. And the point I'm trying to make here, and I also want to hear Versan thoughts, is that this time XRP has pumped while BTC dominance is still 64%. What's going to happen when BTC dominance falls 10% or perhaps fall to 45 or 40%? I think we still have a lot of room for XRP to increase its price during this bull run. I think this is just the beginning, and I want to hear your thoughts on that, Versan.
My God, man, there's so much to say about Bitcoin. Well, first of all, Bitcoin, hit 108,000, but you have to understand that the price is not what it seems. In fact, 100% completely artificial, and I'll explain exactly how this is possible. And despite all the headlines, I can guarantee you not a single central bank on this planet is actually buying Bitcoin. They say they are, but some institutions are building products on Bitcoin like the ETF, which is going to invite more suckers in. But the media says they are. But when you dig deeper, you start to find out the real buyer behind Bitcoin and propping it up is also MicroStrategy, and that's really it. That's the truth no one wants to really admit, is that the same revolving door around Bitcoin Tether is being used to recycle liquidity. Liquidity then artificially inflates Bitcoin's price. It's just the same game of smoke and mirrors. And if you look at who's buying Bitcoin right now, it's speculative retail investors, right? They're chasing green candles. And It's the same institutions that are actually hyping it up with all the noise and using those same retail investors as exit liquidity. So they pump the price to offload their holdings. And with that profit, what do? They buy hard assets, they buy real estate, they buy gold, income producing infrastructure, and even utility layer technologies with real world use cases. So that's the play here. Look here, don't look over there, right? That's how the system continues to survive and thrive. Um, People think that markets are shifting because of the charts and the sentiment, but they're not. It's actually shifting in the code, and that's the underlying protocol, right? And Bitcoin's price, you got to understand, it's not based on use case, compliance, or integration into the financial infrastructure or the system. It's pure speculation wrapped in an illusion of legitimacy, right? Can Bitcoin go higher? Will it? Absolutely, sure. It's going to hit 200,000 maybe eventually, possibly, but let's be honest, like that doesn't mean you're going to make money. I think everybody in this space is looking for asymmetric upside, and the upside is very limited, right? But the risk is astronomical, and that's not an asymmetric bet. I think that's a trap. So if you're looking for real upside, you need to be positioned in technologies that offer, again, the regulatory alignment, the real world use case, and political and institutional support that's being adopted for the infrastructure of the future. And I can promise you that's not Bitcoin. I'm going to give you some upside to all this, though. Just hear me out. The utility protocols, I think, assets, XRP, XLM, and others that are being integrated into the plumbing of the next monetary system. So Bitcoin is still going to be volatile, and volatility, once again, is not a store of value. I think gold still fits that definition. Now, just to kind of bring up to speed where we are historically, like Edo said, Bitcoin dominance will peak, and then afterwards it will flatten, and eventually it starts to bleed out. And when it bleeds out, what happens next? That's when altcoins begin to catch fire, right? So I think we're close to that moment. And overall, I think you could feel the tension because capital is actually looking for that asymmetric upside, and it's going to be altcoins that will deliver that when Bitcoin starts to cool off. So again, timing here is everything, and I think we're almost there.
Totally agree, Versan. That's another reason why BTC is just not a good choice right now. Once the dominance peak, we all know what's going to happen to the price. And there's something very interesting that has happened, like, I think 2 weeks ago. And unfortunately, we didn't have the turning point last week to make some comments on this one. But Michael Saylor refuses to show Strategy's Bitcoin wallet. So that really shows that they are hiding something. And every time they come with this terrific news, like they always saying that my MicroStrategy bought $300 million worth of BTC, yet the price is increasing like 1% or 0.5%. You really start to question how truthful are these statements, right? So one thing that I want to point out, let me bring here on the charts, and if you guys watch our podcast, you know, multiple times we came with the volume on the charts, and I'm going to show you that once again, BTC is very near the all-time high, and yet there's still very low liquidity on the charts. As you can see here, look at the bottom of this chart here. This is actually BTC versus USD, and this is the volume right now. So as we always said, the big financial institutions were indeed buying large sums of Bitcoin in 2014, in 2015, 16, 17, 18. Well, the last glimpse of liquidity in the markets was around before the peak in 2020, as you can see here in the charts, and then it has just declined substantially. So you don't really need high volume to make new all-time highs. The proof is on the charts, but you do need high volume to have strong support levels. So the moment these institutions decide to offload their Bitcoins, that's the time we're going to see a massive decline for BTC's price. Now, we can't really predict when that's going to happen. We don't have a crystal ball, but the charts just, they don't lie. I challenge you, open TradingView and look the volume for yourself. You're going to conclude there's something very odd happening right now. That's why Michael Saylor is not showing the proof on the blockchain that MicroStrategy is actually acquiring large sums of BTC. I can also come here and tell you guys, you know what? Yesterday I bought 500 million XRPs, and then you just open the chart, the price is still the same. There's no volume on the charts. Is he actually telling the truth? That's what we have to start asking questions. And by asking the right questions, we're going to actually fully understand what's happening. That's why they have been pushing BTC towards the masses. And now, if you look all the way back here, when the best entry for BTC was 10 years ago, and guess what mainstream media was telling you about BTC 10 years ago? Well, they were telling you that's a scam.
Mm.
I hate to use people of my family as an example, but when I sold my car, and we're talking about 2017, and I first bought BTC, I think it was $16,000. Everyone was telling me, you know what, that's a scam. And
Yeah.
guess what's happening now? People were asking me, how can I buy BTC? Because they're hearing from mainstream searches that BTC is going to outperform the majority of assets. BTC is going to outperform gold. And that's exactly the moment that I'm out. I sold my last BTC a long time ago, and I have been making the right choices and outperforming BTC by at least 300, 400% by actually getting on XRP, SHX, Velo. We're going to have a conversation more in front of this live streaming. Any extra thoughts here, Sam, before we jump to the next subject?
Yeah, this is from I think 2000. I posted this a long time ago. 2024. Okay, sorry, January. Um, this article, if you go look for it, it's scrubbed off the internet. It's an old one, but I remember reading this one, and then it got scrubbed off. I did share it with a few people. John Deaton even retweeted this once. I forgot what he said exactly, but my point though is that you have to really dig deep to see the nefariousness about what's going on with the whole Bitcoin thing. But overall, I think the Bitcoin pump, it's buying time for the dollar. We have so many videos on this podcast where we try to explain this and connect the dots. Even Matthew Piepenberg, he supported the conclusions we came to, and I think he did a better explanation about it. But they're buying time with Bitcoin and the revolving door, again, to prop up the bond market before everything begins to go live. So I think the real financial reset, whether it's through RLUSD, I think that's going to play a major role. We'll talk about that in a bit, or some other programmable dollar instrument. It's all being rolled out in the background. And, you know, when it goes live, and it will at a time of their choosing, I think everything will shift overnight. It's very possible. But to your point, Edo, you know, the only assets that are going to survive for sure and thrive are going to be the ones that are compliant, that are scalable and ready for real adoption. So again, you know, if you're listening to this and you're looking for asymmetric upside, don't follow the hype, follow the infrastructure, follow the technology, because this might be your last window of opportunity to position yourself before the system does flip. And if you look around the world with everything going on, indeed, you could say that we're getting to that turning point, no pun intended.
Absolutely true. There's a whole new infrastructure that's being laid out, and most people are paying attention to the wrong assets. I think I saw Senator, how is her name, the woman, Warren, I
Oh
think.
God.
Sorry, yeah, and she was praising basically Ethereum and Bitcoin. What else you need
Oh,
to actually do to wake up for the reality that XRP is still sitting on the sidelines of mainstream media? I mean, nobody's actually talking about this digital asset. I just take some Ubers, even in the United States, where I thought people were very aware of digital assets. XRP being an American digital asset, let's say, okay, Ripple is the American company, doesn't really mean that XRP belongs to Ripple. And just saying that I was expecting more awareness of XRP. I was talking like to Uber drivers. Nobody has a clue of what. Nobody. I spoke to at least 6 or 7 taxi drivers, Uber drivers. Nobody really knows what's XRP about. And I was just having this conversation. 6 million wallets in total. And considering everyone has multiple wallets, in my case, I have said this many times, probably 20, 25 wallets. So it's estimated that less than 1 million XRP holders really hold their private key. So that really shows how early we are to this game. And what really catches my attention every time is that all of the mainstream magazines, you have even Forbes, they openly talk about BTC, but they keep ignoring XRP. And if we just connect the dots, one thing that I want to say, the digital euro is coming now in a matter of months. In October, it's going to be ready in Europe. You're going to have, it's already some sort of CBDCs. They have said this openly. Christine Lagarde has praised Ripple many times, and still most people are ignoring that XRP is here to revolutionize the financial system, and it's terrifying. I mean, I'm very scared of knowing that even people from my family are not even getting prepared for this transformation. They are not even investing. I am one of the guys that for years I have been talking on a daily basis about XRP, and I still have people on my family. They didn't even take the time to go and buy 100 XRPs. So it's
Yeah.
very surprising, you know.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, also to your point about Senator Warren and Loomis, um, I mean, these people are so corrupt, but you have to understand they represent Wall Street. Even Senator Warren, I think she's still on the Senate Banking Committee. And regardless, when you start talking about projects like Ethereum, I mean, you got to go back and watch the documentary XRP Unleashed. It will give you some insights into the nefariousness of how they went ahead and put this out there. Remember, in 2018, Bloomberg, BBC, which of course these are bullshit mainstream news outlets, but still, they always put some truth with deception in it, right? So you filter out what you need and you leave the rest aside. It was reported in 2018 that XRP, first of all, it was number 2 by largest market cap. I don't think that's an accident, right? And they also reported that its use case was the most extremely valuable. And then all of a sudden, the lawsuits come. Jay Clayton, you guys know about that. And they tried to put these smear campaigns around it. Somebody was trying to bury the technology, okay? They were trying to bury the technology, build infrastructure around it so they could control it. So that is what Ethereum really is. Ethereum will pump, I think, because it's still tied to the Bitcoin cycle. And again, there's no regulation. When you have regulations, then there will be a decoupling. I can guarantee that. But Ethereum will pump, sure. But that's, again, the result of Wall Street corruption, JP Morgan, China, and the Tether loop. But I personally don't want to be part of that system. I do see opportunity a little bit, but it's something I'd rather stay away from because you never know when the whole system could flip. But I invest in what's closest to the core of the financial plumbing, not the hype that's built around faulty scaffolding. There's going to be a time and place for all this stuff to unfold. And I think over time, if we all do our part and just keep pushing the narrative out there and letting people know what they're really doing there with the whole Ethereum ETHgate, right? The whole thing would really collapse eventually. I mean, I don't know when, but Bitcoin and Ethereum certainly have no place in the new infrastructure unless they adopt some of the underlying technology, and that's RippleNet. So we'll talk about that in a little bit too.
It's definitely a house of cards built
Yeah.
on deception when we're talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum. I truly believe the only salvation for these assets is to be tokenized on the XRP ledger in the future. I think that's the only way out. You can't really do anything with Ethereum. I was just sending some USDT a couple of hours ago. I had to convert to USDC because it's not compliant with MiCA regulation, so I can't really use USDT. And I was like being asked about $25 in fees to just send like $200
Yeah.
on the Ethereum network. So you really start to question, well, at this point, it's better to use the traditional banks. The whole thing here is to get rid of the outdated banking fees and controlling system. But in the end of the day, with Ethereum, that's not happening. So you really have to ask yourself a question. Now, I just came back from XRP Las Vegas, wonderful event, and some of the things that really caught my attention is that most of the panels were about tokenization of real world assets. This is a picture I took from the stage. This is about tokenized properties on the XRP ledger. So the way they tokenize real estate is they take a property or a building or a plot of land and they actually divide each fraction of this property is a token on the blockchain, and you can actually use XRP to buy a tokenized fraction of that property, building, or whatever we're talking about. The XRP ledger is just the perfect technology for that. So you had a lot of talks about tokenization of real world assets. That's the big trend happening right now. Another thing that was mostly spoken about on XRP Las Vegas is of course about stablecoins. So when you look at Ripple's new advertisements, everything is about stablecoins. So it's just a digital version of the US dollar or any fiat currency. And that really signals that we are moving towards central bank digital currencies. I don't know why people still are in denial, and speaking to a lot of Americans, and I don't want to say this in an offensive way, but I saw a lot of Americans telling me that no, that's never going to happen in the United States. But I have the feeling that, especially with Trump's administration, they are just laying out the infrastructure and the regulatory framework. I have the impression that, let's say, the U.S. government, let's say they are buying pieces of an airplane, like the flaps, they buying every single part that you can possibly imagine of an airplane. But when you ask them what you're going to do with that, they are just saying, no, we're not going to build an airplane. That's the impression that I have. So they really preparing the framework. They having private meetings with Ripple, and in the end of the day, they're going to tell you, no, we're not going to make CBDCs in the United States. So why they are hanging out with Ripple? We have to start asking these questions, and we have to prepare accordingly. Because in my opinion, well, it's going to happen in Europe. We already know that the European Central Bank, as I mentioned before, is laying out the digital euro in October. We also know BRICS nations are planning to do the same. So I don't really think there's going to be a choice for the United States. It's going to have to join the party at some moment, I think, eventually. And we're going to get there, and we also want to make a quick comment on what's happening with the political situation in the United States.
Okay.
We spoke before, and we said we don't want to get too political, but I think it's worth to address what's happening there. Do you want to start making some thoughts about the situation?
My God, I got so many things to say, and I'm reading also the comments. Can I go piece by piece? Is that okay, man? Because
let's go.
All right. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for all the love and support. People are sending some very kind messages in there, and it got me emotional for a second. So thank you. I will be better by next week for sure. First of all, somebody made a statement about transactions that are very minimal. And I think that's one of the crux issues here. It's like everyone's so distracted by the price charts, and this whole time, what they're not looking at is that Ripple has been laying down that infrastructure, right, across all the financial systems around the world, banks, payment providers, remittance corridors, central banks. They're not adopting speculation. They're adopting RippleNet. That's the infrastructure. That's the architecture that everything is going to run upon. That's what distributed ledger technology is. That's what you're investing in, right? It's not a theory. It's not speculation. That's the foundation of the new monetary system, a blockchain protocol, right? RippleNet is that accounting system, okay? It's the global messaging layer. It's the interoperability mechanism that's also interoperable with other blockchain protocols that have their use cases. Some people will say quant. You'll see the comments here shortly. But its value is tied to the network. So you have to understand that the global network of institutions with capital flow across all the borders, currencies, any other use case you can imagine, including tokenized assets, which I'll talk about. That's the crux that nobody seems to understand. Instead, what they do is they look at the XRP price and say, it's not moving, must not be worth anything. But that's the problem. These people, in my opinion, are considered to be speculators, spectators even, and even tourists. That's what I would call them. Okay, they don't understand how the tech is being used behind the scenes, but more importantly, by the same institutions that move all the money around the world. So they're looking at the scoreboard instead of realizing that the real game is happening in the code. So there's a time and place for all of this. It's not just a token, it's the value layer for a global financial operating system. And that's where the key is. Think about it. In a digitized, tokenized economy where stability, speed, and settlement matter more than speculation, that's when XRP starts to take the characteristics of a true store of value in a digital economy. You got to understand, we're not playing in the old economy anymore. We're going into a programmable economy driven by artificial intelligence, by compliance, efficiency at scale. So this is economic warfare by protocol, not politics. That's what people don't seem to understand. And when Rosie Rio says the train has left the station, now more than ever, I couldn't agree more. I think 99% of the blockchain protocols you see out there, they're not going to make it because what they've done is repackaged what has been decided long ago. And only without the compliance, without that scale, without the backing. So I don't really waste time anymore debating price action as far as XRP. My focus these days is more about how do I protect the capital, something Jake Claver and I are going to talk about soon. I'm going to have him back on the show. How do we stay relevant as artificial intelligence continues to replace 90% of the job market? How can I position myself in the technologies that the next system are going to be built on? AI isn't just coming for your job, it's coming for your whole industry. So just what I'm trying to say, instead of chasing pumps, I've chosen patience and I've diversified into assets that align with the macro shift. And that means years of stagnation and patience. Guess what that's going to do? It's going to change your life. And it already has changed my life. In the last 4 years, I've built more wealth than I thought I would ever make. So, it's not about getting rich overnight. And the whole transaction thing, that's going to occur over time. And you'll see that eventually it's going to consolidate the financial system. And just very short explanation on tokenization. It's accelerating. It's moving very fast. And what I like to ask myself is like, what happens when all the value of the old world meets the infrastructure of the new one? And I can promise you, they're not going to use Bitcoin for that. Not meme coins either. They're using very specific technologies that are built to carry that value at scale, right? And that's where XRP, Algorand, Hedera comes in. And you're going to see it's going to be all supported by stable coins too. Not just any stable coins though, right? The stable coins that we've talked about on this show for many years now. Regulated, institutionally backed, and interoperable stable coins that will provide the liquidity tools for that programmable financial economy. And I think that's why the Genius bill is so important. The Genius stablecoin bill, it matters because that's where you see these people playing cat and mouse in Washington, right? While they stall the bills publicly, but behind the scenes, they're still already investing in that very same infrastructure. So it's a patience game. It's already in motion, and I think it's inevitable. So yeah, I mean, I could go on and on, but I don't want to hijack the whole conversation.
No, we love to hear you, man. You're doing great. Just some people are joining now and asking why Versen's not on camera. Well, he's live streaming from the hospital, so you should all appreciate that. Hopefully next week he's going to be back home. Now, just to complement what you have said, and when I was in XRP Las Vegas, someone came and asked me a question that I would like to address. I think that's something that's it's on the mind of some people. And the question was, what if they create with artificial intelligence, let's say a brand new blockchain, and they decide they don't want to use the XRP ledger anymore? That's outrageous. So let me just explain why. In order to revolutionize the whole financial system, you need robustness and you need something that has been proven over time. So you have XRP is one of the first digital assets, and of course, this transition from the traditional finance towards a Web3 system where you have blockchain technology revolutionizing banks, you need years of reliability. In other words, you have to conduct tests on the XRP ledger for a decade or so, so that's finally ready to integrate that with the traditional banking system. That's, as David Schwartz say, you don't revolutionize the system overnight. So it's out of question that they would come with some new technology in 2025 and they would suddenly decide to integrate that. You need to prove that the blockchain system works. And I use as example, for example, let's say Algorand. It had never had one single downtime in its entire existence. Then you have to ask yourself the questions. Is this the type of technology that central banks need to move value? And that's absolutely yes. The same thing doesn't happen with Solana, doesn't happen with Bitcoin, doesn't happen with Ethereum. These systems have failed. They were created as prototypes. They have been the test nets. And right now, when you understand that whenever there's a higher demand for BTC, the network gets congested. The same thing happens with Ethereum, where the high transaction fees make it almost impossible for the average person to use Ethereum. You can even say that when there is a high demand for Ethereum, most retail investors are priced out. Not that is impossible to buy, but they simply can't use the network. It just becomes extremely expensive. And then you have more reliable technologies like Solana, which of course it offers more transactions per second than Ethereum and BTC combined. But again, it goes down every month. It halts down because it's not a reliable blockchain. Now, if you compare that with the XRP ledger, with Algorand, or with XLM, Stellar blockchain, that's the type of robustness that financial institutions need to adopt blockchain technology. So I just wanted to make that very clear that you can't have a new system being integrated with banks without at least a decade of tests and successful robustness of this system. Now, to clarify about the Trump versus Elon Musk, I don't
Oh
want to
shit.
get, I don't want, yeah, that's something we have to make a few comments. I don't want to take any side on this discussion, even though I made some fun comments a few days ago on my X, if you guys follow me. But I think this was about breaking the trust in politicians. I think that's about
Mm.
creating this new political party, which Elon Musk has openly said on X. And that's the scary part. I think that's about getting rid of elected politicians. I think that's a big theatrical, political theater. I think that's just, it's all happening in behind the scenes. I don't think that's a real discussion happening there.
Mm.
And the thing is, even linking Donald Trump to, I will not even mention the words here, otherwise they would shut our channel down. But it's about technocracy. I truly believe they did that to demoralize politicians, break the trust from the public to elected politicians, so that in the future they want to bring a solution that's probably going to integrate some sort of AI technology and combine with the technocracy. And in the future, we might have blockchain systems acting like elected politicians, perhaps without even being voted. Do you want to make some thoughts on that, Versan?
Yeah. First of all, I saw people in the comments saying COVID. You know, what's funny? I've never ever caught COVID, ever, and I do take care of myself very well. I distance myself from most people as well. So, not because I'm antisocial, but I just keep my distance from people because of personal hygiene. All right. I know it sounds really mean, but no, it's not. Anyways, to your point, Edo, before I get into the whole like Elon Musk Trump thing, I'll keep it very brief because, you know, I don't want to upset anyone here either. But you were talking about this compliant ecosystem pretty much where these technologies service different niches in the global marketplace. So just to clarify, like example, when you mentioned Algorand brings what? Speed and finality in settlement. Okay. XRP comes with what? Cross-border functionality, liquidity provision for that speed and finality. See, Hedera HBAR, what do? They play the role through enterprise grade governance, but security mostly, and tokenized frameworks. If you look at Hedera, and we talked about this, actually, I mentioned this on Lewis Jackson's show in 2022, how the military industrial complex was actually utilizing Hedera Hashgraph for military applications, right? And when you start talking about tokenized assets, and that can include energy projects, military grade projects, right? You need that enterprise grade governance. You need that security for that framework. See, so it's complementary. As far as the whole Trump Elon Musk thing, without going into too much detail, exactly what you said. We talked about it on this podcast, remember, like a few months ago. And yeah, I think it's all theater, of course. But what I think is making all of this move faster over time, like, I mean, everything, right, is the geopolitics. I even wrote papers on this, right? That XRP, even, for instance, I said it was not an American issue. It was a geopolitical issue, because it affects the whole world. That's an example. But every crisis that you see happening, even right now, what's happening in Los Angeles, every conflict, every piece of financial instability you see, like with the layoffs and the high inflation, it's not random. This is that whole problem, reaction, solution playbook, right? What they need to do is destabilize the old system to justify the one that they're trying to implement, okay? And while the public is watching the drama unfold, I'm not talking about our community, right? I'm talking about when you're on X and you're scrolling, you see people debating constantly back and forth, back and forth. By the way, I try to stay off X so much because it really evokes negative emotions. You know, when you see those things happening, I think it's important to be vigilant and alarmed about what's happening, but you don't have to constantly be on it, right? Um, but that's what the overall public is doing. They're watching all this drama unfold, and it's evoking emotion, whether they realize it or not. And that's how they win, by driving fear into you as well. But the institutions are the ones putting this together, pushing it out there. They're financing the corruption. They're financing the problem reaction solution playbook, and at the same time positioning themselves by acquiring the rails, taking control of the technology, artificial intelligence, right? So I think, you know, just overall, it's theatrics. I don't pay attention to it as much anymore, but I do sometimes. I feel like obligated to let people know that we did talk about this,
Yeah.
because we did talk about this in detail, by the way. It's a patience game. What they're doing is a chess game. I get it. Okay. It's all in motion. It's inevitable, but just don't overwhelm yourself with it, because
I want
then you
to
lose sight of the bigger picture, right? And it's a spiritual battle that we're living through right now. War over the mind of this human species, really.
I want to add something, Versan. If we are heading towards a totalitarian system where everything's tokenized on a blockchain, I'm not saying it's all on the XRP ledger, but multiple chains, perhaps going to be five, six, seven, or eight different main blockchains where everything's going to be tokenized and there will be interoperability. Every single blockchain is going to be connected with each other. If you have a blockchain that can't be interoperable, you end up with an isolated database that doesn't connect. So one thing that we will need is internet everywhere, right? If you want to play this game, you need every single person on Earth to have access to a fast internet connection. So guys, hear me out. First thing, I traveled I travel a lot these last 2 months, and one thing that's really caught my attention that would be impossible perhaps 5 years ago, it's how good internet connection I had virtually everywhere. So I went to Mexico, I took a long flight from Europe, I fly to Germany, from Germany I flew to Tulum, and the fact is I had access to internet on the plane all the time. So I could really do my work. Even if I decided to make a live streaming from the plane, probably that would work. Very fast internet connection. Now, in Mexico, is a very interesting reality where you have approximately 50% of the population is still unbanked, so they don't even have a banking account. But more than 98% of Mexicans have access to a smartphone and internet. Okay. Then you start to connect some dots. Who is actually laying out the internet system for everyone?
Yeah.
Starlink. It's Elon Musk, right? Elon Musk has this system which actually provides internet for everyone,
From
which
above.
is from above, the most fastest internet connection ever. Well, that's one of the elements that you need for a totalitarian system. Okay. You also need other factors. So one thing that you need at some point, you're going to need currencies like XRP and XLM to be running on the system. We know that he's also connected with, I have a brain fog now, how is called his company of payments, that he's connected with Jed McCaleb from
Yeah.
Stellar.
Yep.
Can someone help me in the comments? I got a brain fog right now.
No, yeah,
Anyway,
right. It is.
yeah, so you have all the elements for doing so, and then you start to connect the dots and you have to ask yourself some questions. What's the final outcome? You guys have ever heard of Mamma Mia? Today I am terrible with the name of series, the Black Mirror on Netflix. I call that not a series, that's a documentary of how they want the population to be controlled in 3 or 4 or 5 years from now. So we really start to ask the questions, and then Elon Musk is now telling that he wants to lay out a new political party in the United States. Do you think that's a coincidence, Versan?
Of course not. You know, I really encourage our new listeners to go listen to some of the things we've talked about in the past. I think, you know, everything that's playing out is been written. When I say written, I mean, they've been playing this for a long time. And I'm not trying to sound doom and gloom, but even the World Economic Forum, they said that, listen, I watched the whole thing in 2020. I watched about 24 hours of the World Economic Forum, and I had to do this over a few days. That's when I started my talking about this on YouTube, and my first channel got shut down, right? But what I was telling people of what I heard is Klaus, whether he's been removed or not, there's a new man who's taken his place, and he is no friend of yours. I can promise you that. Even the new Pope is not a friend. He met with Mark Carney, and before the Pope died, Mark Carney told him that we needed a Pope that was pro-China, and he said he would take the place. And then the Pope dies, right? That's not an accident, right? Now, again, just overall, Starlink, their relationship with Jed McCaleb and Elon Musk, you have to dig deep to find it, but it's there. I can promise you. I've searched for this before, right? And the World Economic Forum did openly talk, and it's not just Klaus Schwab who mentioned this, but they openly discussed about a cyber attack that would affect the whole world, and it would spread like a contagion, right? And do they have measures in place for this, for a predetermined solution? Absolutely. What is Stellar's motto? Banking the unbanked, giving financial inclusion to people when they have none. And I have a joke with Andy Schectman and a few others, and I always say, they're going to bank the unbanked after they bankrupt the whole world, right? But that seems like what they're doing. They have the satellites in place. They're working with Stellar. Stellar's already making big moves. Nobody talks about it. They're already endorsed by the United Nations, the IMF, and I mean, it goes deep. It really does. And I've done the research on this before, and I think I've put some papers on it. So to your point, Edo, I think this is all predetermined. And I think they're going to use this technology at a time of their choosing. And this is why I'm always encouraging people to play offense and defense at the same time, consistently in your playbook strategy. You play offense by accumulating the key digital assets that you know are going to be implemented. And then you play defense by rotating some of those profits. I'm not talking about core positions like XRP, XLM, and a few others. I'll explain that in a minute. But you play defense by rotating your profits into hard assets, which include gold, silver, land, cash, before they make it disappear entirely, or before it gets locked up by capital controls. And they're already implementing capital controls in the West now. Like, it's starting to accelerate. I got debanked recently. That never happened before. And the elimination of cash, the war on cash, is real, and it's ongoing. And the push for some sort of digital money, CBDC, you could call it whatever you like. Universal basic income sounds nice, sounds friendly, but it's not. I'll give you an example. What is it called? The green agenda. You see, the green agenda, it's called euphemism. The green agenda sounds beautiful, doesn't it? The green agenda. It sounds something nice. Did you know the green agenda is the depopulation agenda? Did you know that? And people would endorse it because it sounds like we're saving the planet, but by killing everybody off. That's not a joke. That's real. It's in their documents, okay? So again, the push for CBDCs, the push for tokenization of everything is essentially about traceability, programmability, control. And that's why I'm always encouraging our friends here, our listeners, to own off-grid value, because it's just as important as riding the digital wave that you can't fight. Gold and silver is very important to me, because the end game here is a hybrid system. And make no mistake, I don't think the world is instantly going to collapse into chaos, but they're going to keep kicking the can through liquidity injections, rate cuts, all this nonsense, manufactured financial solutions. But the end game is already set in motion. Gold is indeed coming back, not just as a hedge, but part as a settlement mechanism. It's being integrated into the financial system. CBDC's universal basic income will eventually come into fruition. Why do I say this? I explained it when XRP Lion attacked me and called me a paid influencer. I mean, I wish I was getting paid, right? I'm not getting paid. I do really good research and I put out my thoughts out there. That's it. It's that simple. But what did he say? He said there will be no CBDCs. And a lot of people say this. Okay, I agree with you. I'm not endorsing it. But you have to bear in mind, the same people who say there will be no CBDCs or UBI say that only a few people hold XRP, a few people own digital assets. Okay, well, what are you going to do about 7 billion people out there? Are you going to just exclude them from the conversation? No. They're going to be subject to some sort of digital infrastructure, some sort of payment of account, some unit, right? That's digital money. Okay. So there will be some sort of universal basic income, which is, I think, another euphemism for a central bank digital currency. Because effectively it's programmable money, it's digital. Did you know I heard an economist say this in 2016 before I got into the space? And he said, we're going to have CBDCs because we'll never have a recession again. That's what he said. Problem, reaction, solution. Allow the system to collapse by the same people who manufactured the crisis, and then come out with a predetermined solution saying, hey, well, with a CBDC, we'll never have a recession again because you have to spend it on this and this and this by the end of the month. Otherwise, it goes away. That's a digital coupon. We talked about this in 2022, and now it's becoming mainstream as a topic. But if you can raise the awareness of people, maybe we can have a real shot at implementing a golden age, but without the nefariousness that's still tied to it. So that all ties into what Elon and Musk and Trump are doing, right? It's all staged. It's theater. So that's what I have to say, man.
It's a big show, man. It's a big show. Even Elon Musk, a couple of days ago, he came out on X and said that Trump's tariffs would trigger a recession in a couple of months from now. And I think he even deleted that tweet. But they are really communicating us that in order to reset the system, you need to first completely shut it down. That's the way they plan to do it. And this picture here is very unique. I don't know if you ever saw this, Versan. I actually put this picture out, I think, 1 year ago, but that's very unique. It's actually a dinner that took place with Stripe. Stripe, if you guys don't know, is the company that processes the payments on X. And this is a very old picture of Stripe and Ripple. And you had Jed McCaleb, and if you look well in the picture, you're going to find also Chris Larsen and the head of business for Stripe. And you know that in this dinner here, they had decided that Stripe was about to acquire Ripple. How interesting is that, right? And Stripe is now connected to Elon Musk. And what happens next is that the deal didn't go through. And that's actually one of the triggers that made Jed McCaleb to quit Ripple and actually go and fund Stellar to create XLM. He actually did it. Now, a lot of people think they are competing with each other. I think that's a misconception. I think Ripple and Stellar exist to bypass the competition laws in the United States. But what's very interesting is that apparently they have been planning this for, apparently, no, let's be honest. This is all planned out for over a decade. So you had these companies called Stripe, that's now the mainstream company processing payments on X, and that was about to actually purchase Ripple. And right now they are about to launch. They are converting X into a big bank. It's going to become some sort of financial institution, and you need a currency for X. Which currency you think is going to be used? I mean, you just start to connect the dots. There's only two choices. It's either XLM or it's XRP. I don't see any other choice. So things are getting very interesting. And we have over 5,000 people watching us live. And if there's one thing I want to really tell you guys is don't fall for this political theater. I think don't pay attention really to what's happening with Donald Trump, Elon Musk. We have to look on the other direction. They want us to look on the right way, and all the action is happening over here, and that's about the whole financial system is about to be shut down. We're going to have a huge reset, we can call it as it is, as the World Economic Forum has predicted. Another interesting thing is pay attention to cyber attacks. That's why I encourage everyone to have digital assets on their cold wallets. We know
Yeah.
they did that back in 2019 with Event 201. They predicted a pandemic. I have to be careful with my words here. And then a couple of months later, that indeed happened. Now they did a very similar event. It's called the Cyber Polygon,
Hmm.
where they came out and they predicted we would have some sort of cyber attacks that would trigger a reset in the financial system. And now we have Elon Musk telling us the United States is about to go on a recession. So it's harsh times ahead, but I think if we are all positioned and we are preparing accordingly, I know many of the people watching us, they hold precious metals. I think that's one of the safest things to do right now. And we get 10 minutes left around Versan. I would like to talk about one specific digital asset that I truly believe is going to be one of the best performing assets in the next months to come. And that's absolutely Stronghold, SHX.
Hmm.
So if you don't know about SHX, they creating payment APIs for business. It's also interoperable. It's built on top of Stellar blockchain. I think they also have
Yeah.
on Ethereum, right? It's multi-chain, but
Multi-chain. Yes.
multi-chain, yeah. The future is multi-chain. There's nothing wrong to be connected with Ethereum. We are not fans of Ethereum, but we understand that interoperability is the key here. They also do a stablecoin settlement and liquidity.
Hmm.
It's one of my favorite digital assets. I got to speak with some people in XRP Las Vegas. I got some information about this project. It might get listed on mainstream exchanges very soon. So, Versan, do you want to make some thoughts on SHX? I know you're also a huge fan of SHX.
Yeah. I mean, since the beginning of 2024, you and I together, we did a podcast and we were telling people to load up on SHX and Velo. And by the way, Edo, can you pull up the logo of Velo so people stop
Ah, yeah, yeah,
communicating the wrong one? I don't
yeah.
know how this keeps happening, but if you go to velo.org, so velo.org, you'll find their website. You could read about it, learn about it. I think it's important to learn about what you're putting your money into. But there you go. Thank you. That's the logo, though. So please don't get into the wrong one. But SHX and Velo, they have fundamental. They're built for a regulated digital banking system, and that is coming. So if you break it down, both SHX and Velo, they focus on two very critical components of a functioning economy. Number one is borrowing and lending. That is a very important. That's what keeps the economy moving. That's the engine. That's where credit is created also. And that's also where debt is issued. And that's what Velo is doing. So if you understand how money works in general in traditional banking, you understand that's what keeps everything flowing, right? And they're not operating in the shadows. Velo, there's Jed McCaleb. Yep. Velo is already involved in QR code integration, which is very important because that's the future of how people are going to move money as well. You've got Visa, MasterCard, and Amazon all working with Velo as well. So they're not speculative coins, what I've been saying. These are just pieces of the infrastructure and the digital plumbing for what's coming next. SHX, very similar. In 2024, I put a tweet out where the IMF, the World Bank, and even, unfortunately, the Bill Gates Foundation, they were all leveraging Stronghold's
Yeah,
infrastructure. Okay. To what end? We'll see, right? Also, Ripple is heavily invested into Stronghold. So that's not a coincidence. They're working on regulated remittances and payment rails. I saw a very interesting comment where somebody said, X might use SHX, and that's very possible. But this is where it gets interesting. They were both built on the Stellar network. So it's complementary to the Stellar XLM ecosystem, which is about financial inclusion, banking the underbanked and unbanked, right? So in other words, SHX and Velo, I think, are at the front lines of building the rails for the compliant digital banking part in the Stellar ecosystem. And this is the best part. They're still cheap. Okay.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's why I told people to get in, right? Because it gave people the opportunity to accumulate. I told everyone, in January, I took $87,000, half and half from Velo and SHX. And I'm a little upset because I could have made so much more. If I had bought more and listened to myself, I would have made even more. I could have been easily sitting on seven figures, but I didn't. I didn't even listen to myself. And that was a humbling moment for me. So what did I do after the correction came in January? I've been accumulating ever since, quietly and strategically, but I've been telling everybody on the podcast, right? Because I'm playing the macro cycles. I'm really waiting for Bitcoin dominance to rotate into the real altcoins with real value. And that's when I'm going to take more profits. And that's when I'm going to stack more gold, buy hard assets, and position myself for the next wave. So that's how I play the game. And my only focus is on technologies that are very close to the banking system, and I know Zabak, I know what Ondo is. I've talked about them, you and I did in our last two podcasts, I think, but I've made it very clear. I don't have the time or energy to chase every new protocol that is issued,
Yeah.
especially ones that are built on the Ethereum network, which I personally don't trust. We talked about Ethereum briefly, earlier, but the fact that SHX and Velo are both built on Stellar, they have real integration, they have partnerships globally, institutional use case, you can say, and even infrastructure, right? So you don't need 100 coins, you just need the right ones. And I think SHX and Velo offer that opportunity.
Totally agree, Bersan. Most importantly, is built on the right technology and is part of the ecosystem that's going to thrive in the future. You can see here they work with JP Morgan, Stellar, and some of the largest financial enterprises. You have the Deutsche Bank, KPMG.
Yeah.
So SHX is absolutely a sleeping giant this cycle. For the record, if you go purchase today SHX, I did the math a few days ago. With $8,000, you get over 1 million SHX. That's how early you can be on this game. Tokenomics looks very solid for this project. And about Velo, be very careful, guys. I know someone was asking if it's Velo or Velodrome. Make sure you watch the repetition of this show so you're going to have the right logo. It's Velo, it's not Velodrome. And you can find a Velo on Maxi. I think you guys in the United States are not allowed to use Maxi, right? But I think it's also on Bitru. And you might find SHX for sure on Maxi, but there is a wallet is called Lobster. That's the equivalent of Xaman wallet for XLM. So you can just go there, send XLMs, and you can convert the XLMs to SHX, even to Velo, and then you have it in a cold storage. So it's a very safe way to get some.
Yeah.
I say this on my consulting sessions, and I'm telling this openly here. These are two of my largest bets for this cycle. I know we already did great profits, but it's still incredibly cheap. It's not financial advice. I just wanted to share this opportunity with you guys. And it's honestly, do some homework, do your research on Stronghold and Velo, and you will understand why we are so excited about these projects, right, Versan?
Yeah, 100%. And again, not financial advice, but they do have fundamentals. Like we did the research, and that's why we've been explaining it for over a year. And we always remind people, like, for the cycles, if you're going to take profits, it gives you the opportunity because they're still very cheap and they do have fundamentals. So this is where it gets interesting. Whether it's regulatory frameworks that bring this into fruition, it's a win, right? But
Absolutely.
if it's Bitcoin, Bitcoin peak dominance, and then it rotates into altcoins, it's also a win. So regardless, it's a win-win. And that's what I love about these technologies, those two. And also I want to mention that I did put the website stellarterm.com. That's the best place to buy it because you're purchasing it off the Stellar network. I think that's the safest place to buy it. Somebody also asked, why is it not listed on Coinbase? You have to understand that before
That's
they get
your opportunity. That's the opportunity.
Yeah, you buy it before it gets listed on the exchanges. So this is almost like a pre-IPO, you could say, right? You're purchasing it before it gets listed on the exchange at a higher price. So when it gets listed on the exchange, the price goes up significantly. Then retail investors start to get in, but that's when you should be taking profits. And yeah. So
and it's funny because still a lot of people don't even they want to buy it, and I noticed this from my consulting sessions. People just don't know how to buy it for the fact it's not on Coinbase, for example. So this is an opportunity to position yourself earlier. That's
what?
Yeah.
I will do this for everybody. As soon as this video is done, I promise I'll go in the description and I will put a step-by-step on how to do this. Okay.
Maybe we should create a video together one day, Versan, and we can actually create a tutorial how to get SHX. I think that's going to be
Yeah,
like,
we can do that.
there's a demand for that because people simply don't know how to do it, and it's very surprising.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that with you for sure. I know we are past an hour, but there is one thing I did want to. Actually, two things. I'll try to make it quick, but if you're interested, Edo, maybe we should cover what people should be looking forward to. I think the next big thing we need to pay attention to is Basel III.
Yep.
That's very important. I've been talking about gold for many years, and anyone that's been following the podcast, the world we know is buried in debt. People are buried in debt. We're not talking about millions or billions. We're talking about hundreds of trillions all over the world. And the system is indeed imploding under the weight of itself, right? And we're transitioning into the digital economy. But like the IMF has openly spoke about this. You must have real value, they said, to back the new system. Otherwise, it's just the same broken infrastructure with a digital paint job. So I want to revisit a narrative, what we've been talking about. They are going to go back to gold. And it's funny that there are people in this community who say they'll never go back to gold because they'll lose control. And this is where there's a twist. That's not true because they already have control. The middle class, I'm sorry to say this, but they've been wiped out already. Most people have been impoverished. People are buried in debt. Most families don't have emergency savings. So let me ask you this, right? And I'm speaking generally. What wealth are they trying to strip from people who don't have anything? And the control structure is already in place. Well, it's getting there. I think the digital system is going to be the final lock on that system, right? Yeah. So the key to trusting that system again is going to be gold. And it's funny because there are some people in this space again who say there won't be gold, but then they keep talking about a golden age. You see the irony there? Like, come on. The golden age means gold. Okay. So, and then finally, if you're, unfamiliar with stakeholder capitalism, go back to 2020 and, you can do your research there. Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission. But let me tell you something. They are going to be integrating gold into the system. That's what Basel III is all about. You have central banks around the world. They've been buying gold. They already classified it as a tier 1 asset class. They're treating it as equal to cash now, right? And guess what? The same central banks are doing. They're the same central banks and institutions that are adopting RippleNet, right? For cross-border infrastructure and stablecoin settlement. Well, what are stablecoins? So I'm connecting the dots here for you very easily, right? Even the World Gold Council talked about this. So we have the documents, we have the references. Gold, stablecoins, and utility protocols, that's the future. That's where it's all going. So you will see a gold-backed stablecoin in time, or even a stablecoin that's collateralized by gold and other assets. And I think that's what XRP will eventually become. And maybe even XLM, because that's exactly how the World Bank described it long ago. So
that's inevitable.
Yeah. Earn, protect, and repeat. That's how you play the game, I think.
Yeah, we must see this intersection of technology with precious metals. Otherwise, as I learned this from, I think you did a podcast with Andy Shackman 2 years ago. That's how ahead of the time you have been, Versan, where you guys have said that a new financial system without precious metals would be a repackage of the current financial system. That's already broken.
Now it's going to be breaking news. You'll see. They'll break the news after it's been broken 100 times. But yeah, I really love what we do here. I love our audience. They understand and they see the picture, and that's the beauty of it. You guys make the
phenomenal to meet many of you in Las Vegas. It was a blessing. So many people come to us. I say us because David was there, and they just say that watching our podcast changed so many lives because it allowed people to get on these digital assets at 50 cents like XRP or XRP below 10 cents or SHX VELO. And I'll tell you guys, this is just the beginning. We haven't even scratched the surface of how deep this financial transformation is going to be. Unfortunately, for the majority of people, it's not going to be beneficial, but for the ones that are paying attention to this huge wealth transformation is going to be wonderful times. That's why I am very optimistic for the future, despite the fact that we are moving towards a technocracy. That's how ironic this situation is, right? But we have this unique opportunity. I think our grandparents, I mean, they had the opportunity to buy real estates, let's say in Manhattan, for example. They had opportunities that we don't have with real estate right now. But in the other hand, our generation has this huge opportunity with digital assets that wasn't possible 50 or 100 years ago. So let's take part of this wealth transfer and let's not be left behind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to take just 1 minute to dedicate some thoughts. There is a
Yes.
creator, he's called Will Fix. He was a XRP YouTuber. He passed away
Hmm.
just yesterday. So I want to send my best wishes for his family. I want to say rest in peace. And this is also a reminder for us to enjoy the process. We never know what's next.
Amen.
And I want to send a special thanks. We have 5,898 people watching the live streaming. 589, that's funny. I want to
Yeah.
send a special thanks to the audience. We are almost hitting 6,000 people watching the live streaming. So a special thanks to everyone.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add, Versan?
Yeah, I'd like to add something. I did. Yeah, Will. I didn't know him personally, but I know he was a big supporter of this podcast. Last night, I took some time to watch some of his videos after seeing your tweet, and I'm going to tell you, I could feel it. I could feel his energy. I could feel his sincerity. I can feel his belief in something greater than himself, and it brought me tears, actually.
Yeah,
And that's not something we often see in this space. Even myself. So, before we move forward, I do want to take a moment with you and everybody here to honor him with a very small prayer, if that's okay.
yeah,
And just want to remind us, in this space and just generally overall, we always wait until loss finds us just to realize what we had. We always forget to reflect on who we are and who we really want to be, right? And what we really want to do here. So I told them I would make a prayer. And I just want to say, Will, may your soul rest in peace, and may the Lord shine a perpetual light upon you and your family and your loved ones. And may you find peace beyond this world, because it's really sad, we have to treat each other with more care. And I speak for myself as well. I sometimes lose my temper on the comments and, that's not who I am. But you don't have to be religious either to feel that. But, death is a natural part of life. And, with that being said, I just want whoever's listening from Will's channel, maybe his wife, or his supporters, just rest in peace. And he will be remembered, and he'll be remembered on this podcast as well.
his message will live forever.
Yeah.
I know James is a dear friend of mine, did a live streaming with him a couple of weeks ago. They even live streamed to my X account, and I had some thoughts. I wanted to invite him on the podcast, and I was devastated to. I never connected with him, but I know about the people who watched him. I know he watched our podcast. He also followed me on X, so it's very sad, but his message will live on.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Amen. Okay. Well, this has been a great call, and thanks for all the support. But yeah, man, I hope I can get out this damn hospital, man. I know what the bill's running already. I don't even want to look at it. I'm going to ask him, will he accept XRP?
Oh no, come on. Pay, if you have any BTC left, use it to pay the bills, man.
Yeah, it's funny. All right. Well, this has
Right.
been
Thank
great.
you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Gonna see you guys next week.
Yes.
Don't.
Yes. All right. Take care.